Hi, I'm Vic Schoenbach, and I'm sitting here with Dr. Bill Jenkins, a distinguished alumnus of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a graduate of the Department of Epidemiology at UNC, and a good friend of mine, and he has many other recognitions that we'll talk about. Today is October the 29th, 2014, and the purpose of this interview is to find out more about his background, his family background, how he found his way to epidemiology. So Bill, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell me about your early years, your family.
Okay.
You were telling me your family came from South Carolina.
Yes. Well, my maternal family were Geechee. They originally were indigo and rice growers on the island of Polly's Island, South Carolina. Probably had been there prior to 1700, from all we can understand, and remained on that island until the Civil War, when my great grandfather joined the first black regiment in the Civil War, the 1st South Carolina Volunteers. Fought for those 4 years, and then
Excuse me, on which side?
Union
Sure.
fought the secess, as they would say.
The Union was recruiting in South Carolina.
Yes. Oh, along the coast anyway. Only along the coast.
Okay.
Yes. And they, after the Civil War, they were mustered out near Charleston, South Carolina, on Fort Wagner, near Charleston, South Carolina, but settled on a peninsula called Mount Pleasant in a community called Greenwich, where the nurse for the regiment started a Quaker school. And so my family has been going to that school for a number of generations. So that's my maternal side. On my maternal side, they came to this country later.
Your paternal side?
My paternal side.
Okay.
Yeah. They came to this country later. They, a young woman from the Gambia region, whose family were caught in a drought, and her family sold her into slavery in order to save the rest of the family at around 10 or 11 years of age. And then she came here to the United States on a ship called the Hannah, and so that's the name she took or the name they gave her, I don't know which, when she landed on Sullivan's Island, South Carolina in 1811. And she was sold to the Kirkland Plantation, which is a very famous American family, of course, and ended up in a relationship that I assume was married, since they were together for 47 years, to a Scottish indentured servant, and started a family.
So this was a biracial marriage?
Yeah, I guess so.
In the pre-Civil War era?
I guess so.
In South Carolina?
In South Carolina. I think and that has happened several times in my family history. The one family that's several books have been written about is a family in which a woman, Elise, I think it was her name, took the name Halston, was in a relationship with one of the brothers of the largest slaveholding family in America, the Ball family, more than 26,000 slaves. And they had a relationship over a 20 or 30 year period, and is now acknowledged as part of the Ball, history. So apparently, this was not as unusual as one would have thought. So anyway, that family, the reason I mention that is because that family had the advantage, that advantage. Then after the Civil War, they got 40 acres, unlike most people. We're still waiting for the mule, but they got 40 acres. It gave them a leg up, and they became business people. And so that family became resourced.
And where was this?
It started in Beaufort Bridge, South Carolina, but they had a conflict between the black businesses that they started and the white businesses. And so they were put in jail, and then the family decided to get them out of jail. But unfortunately, the amount of dynamite that was used was a little more than they had expected, and it kind of blew up the jail, so then everybody had to leave. So and Beaufort Bridge no longer exists as a town, but if you look at a map from where Beaufort Bridge was to Charleston, there are members of the family in almost every town along, I think it's Route 78, toward Charleston, South Carolina. It's a
They blew up
fascinating.
the jail to get free their family.
Right. I don't think they meant to blow up the whole jail.
They didn't hurt the family when they did it, I hope.
No. Apparently they all, made it out. I don't know exactly what happened during that conflict. So they just scattered. They scattered and then ended up in Charleston. And so they started businesses again in Charleston, and then became famous for starting an orphanage, which is started in 1891, so it's 120 years, something like that. 6 and 4, yeah. Or 9 and 4, so a little over 120 years. So the orphanage is a little over 120 years old now.
And that's the Jenkins Institute.
That's the Jenkins Institute, or the Jenkins Orphanage, either one, and if you Google there. And so I grew up in a family in which my mother's family was Geechee and very ingrained in the culture. That culture, my father's family was what they call mulatto and had more resources. So I was caught between these two families. But clearly for me, my identity is with my mother's family. The reason I mentioned my father's family is because having access to resources to be sent to private schools I think makes a big difference in your projection over your life course. And having had to go to a school like Morehouse College, which is where that family went, where the men in that family went, made a difference also, I think, in my life.
The men in that family, and that family was
were my uncles and
your mother's side?
My father's
Your father's side.
My maternal
I need to
family.
write this down a little bit.
Yeah.
So there was your maternal family.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't have to do this, but
Yeah, it's
and your
okay.
paternal family.
Right.
And your paternal family came from the Gambia. Is that
Right. At least the oldest member that we know of came from the Gambia.
Okay. And the maternal family was in
Probably Angola.
Oh.
That side. So they came very early on as
early.
rice growers. And
So they came before slavery.
they came before, well, or right around the same time, and they probably came before 1700.
You think they came as free people?
No,
Oh, okay.
I don't
So it was
know.
early slavery.
Yeah, early slavery. That's right.
Okay, and they were Geechee.
Yeah, and they spoke Gullah.
And they spoke Gullah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that person that I was telling you about that I met who knew you. He said, well, there's this Geechee Gullah person. I said, oh, you mean Bill Jenkins?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And then, and so the person, the Gambia. So the mulattoes were your father's.
That's right.
Okay, and they're the ones who went to Morehouse.
Right.
The men of the family went to Morehouse.
Yeah, Morehouse, Spelman. and Howard.
And they had the businesses?
They had the businesses.
Okay.
Still do.
Okay. But your mother's family had the higher status?
No, my mother's family were tradespeople.
Tradespeople.
Yeah. So in the village I grew up in, my grandmother delivered them, my mother taught them, my father buried them. My uncles built their houses and ran the little shop, and they were all tradespeople, but small time.
And they did the orphanage, though, right?
No,
sorry, the orphanage.
my father's family, who had a number of more well-known businesses in the city of Charleston, built the orphanage. One of the businesses, they were the primary provider of wood to the city of Charleston.
And was it your great uncle?
Yes.
The orphanage?
Mm-hmm.
And your mother's family created the school, right?
Well, they went to the school. The Quakers
friends.
created the school.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I'm back on track.
Yeah. Yeah. So my father's family went to a prep school called Avery, and then the Immaculate Conception, which is a Catholic school that I was sent to when the Quaker School closed. My mother, who was the first person in her family to go to college, finished the Quaker School early, was deceitful about her age, and started teaching school when she was about 14 or 15. Raised enough money from that to send herself to this prep school, to Avery, where she met my father. And then went to Hunter College.
Oh, really?
But did not finish. She ended up finishing at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. Yeah.
Hunter College, I'll be darned.
Yeah, but in those days it was open enrollment.
When would that have been?
Oh, that was late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in there. She's kept trying to go back, but eventually it was just easier to finish at Bennett. My mother-in-law was the first black Ph.D. graduate from Hunter, or Columbia maybe by that time.
Really?
Yes. She also went to Hunter, but later.
Columbia in what?
History. My mother-in-law is a well-known historian. Yeah, Dr. Margaret Rowley. And they celebrate her as the first black Ph.D. graduate.
Wonderful.
Do
you remember what year that was? Roughly?
Oh, no, I don't. I could look it up, though.
I guess I really should be interviewing Diane.
Oh,
also.
I do know. I think it was 1947, because she graduated the same year that the famous historian at Duke, who died a few years ago, they were graduated the same year. He from Harvard and she from Columbia.
Yeah, I'm blocking on his name, but it'll come back to me.
Right.
Okay, so in the 1940s, when you were born, your parents were both living
in Mount Pleasant, in my mother's house.
In your mother's house?
Yeah, a bungalow in Mount Pleasant.
Okay. And were you delivered by her family also? Or?
But, of course.
Do you remember who?
My grandmother. Absolutely.
Your maternal grandmother?
My maternal grandmother. She was a black woman, small, dark, a black woman, very strong, very disciplined, very Quakerly. She believed in silence and simplicity, and had all of the Quaker values that one finds today, or is propagated today.
So you mentioned that the biracial marriage was on your mother's side.
No, on my father's side. My mother's side is strictly Geechee. No intermarrying on my mother's side.
And do you have any other ethnicity represented?
No, just the Scottish guy, as far as I know, okay. Paul Dickinson.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only. Now, of course, many of my relatives on that side of the family marry Europeans. In fact, more of them marry Europeans than African Americans. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So they're different from, and it took me a long time to work through the differences between myself, who identified with my mother's community,
Uh-huh.
but in some ways had to participate in my paternal family because we were the only male Jenkins left. My brother and I were the only two males who had the last name Jenkins. And so, like last month when the city had a celebration, you know, they wanted us to come because I'm the only one who carries the name. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So you said something about it was the fact that your father was a mulatto that let you go to the school.
The fact that his family had money is...
Money. There was a connection between mulatto and money?
Oh, absolutely. In Charleston? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that
Yeah.
enabled you to go to the...
Catholic school
The
for a
Catholic
while.
school. Okay.
You know, once I got accepted to college, though, I was allowed to go back to Lang. So that was
Go back to...
Lang School, my mother's school.
Oh,
Yeah.
so tell me the school. So you started in the...
At Lang School.
Which is...
That's the primary school, formerly Quaker.
And that was the former Quaker school.
See, that's
Okay.
right.
So you went to the Lang School,
That's right.
and then you went to the
Catholic school.
Immaculate
Immaculate Conception.
Conception. And then you went...
And then I went back to Lang once I had gotten into college, and
But once you were accepted...
once I was accepted, then in the 10th, 11th grade, I guess it was, after the 10th grade, I was allowed to go back to Lang School for two reasons. My mother didn't think I was mature enough, for one thing, to be sent to Morehouse. And the second thing is I always wanted to be at Lang. It was where I identified with.
So you were accepted to Morehouse, but you didn't go there right away?
Not right away.
Oh.
Yeah.
So a year, 2 years?
Two. Yeah.
So you got accepted in the 10th grade.
Well, going into the 11th, yeah.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty early for college acceptance. these
Not at
days.
Morehouse.
Oh.
That's not unusual for Morehouse. Martin Luther King went early. A lot of Morehouse students went early. That was not. Students who showed some whatever were recruited by Morehouse men back in those days, and then the family had this connection as well. So the uncle that was being celebrated last month, he went to Morehouse also.
So you went back to the line for 2 years,
Mhm.
and then you set off to Morehouse,
Yeah,
and they decided you didn't know how to talk.
right. Right, Dr. Mays, yes. Son, we don't speak like that here at Morehouse. So I had to take speech from Miss Mitchell for 2 years.
On Saturdays, right?
On Saturdays. No credit.
No credit.
No credit.
Can you remember how you spoke before then?
No, I can't do it. I know, some phrases like, where's your going, I could repeat now because when people ask me that question, I went back and listened to my cousins who are still there, and I memorized certain quotes to give an idea of what it was like. Yeah.
So you weren't interviewed before you went to Morehouse. I mean,
Well, the traditional way is simple. The Morehouse man comes to your house, Sunday dinner, he talks to your parents, and the next thing you know, you're on a train to Morehouse. That was the way it was.
so
done.
apparently the way you spoke wasn't a problem for getting admitted. It was-
No, I think they just looked at my SAT scores and figured I'd get the
You could
rest of
learn how
it
to
done.
speak.
Right.
So, what was it like coming back home, speaking differently? I mean, you went off to Morehouse speaking.
Well, first of all, it was 8 years before I ever went back, and
What?
that was
You didn't go back at all?
no,
Holidays?
no,
Summers?
no.
Why was that?
The only time I can remember wanting to go home was when my grandmother died, and I was on the phone with my mother, and my mother told me, I told her I had an exam, but I could get out of it. My mother said, "What would your grandmother tell you to do?" So I went and took the exam.
But you must have had vacations or holidays or something.
Right. Well,
I mean, I'm just curious.
my mother. What I have mentioned before is my mother is a Trojan wife. You know, a Trojan mother. When the son becomes of age, the mother gives the son a shield, and say, "Come back with this shield or on this shield."
You still had your shield, right? You still had your shield, right?
Well, I was not, in her mind, on course. And because I got involved in the civil rights movement, went to jail, things like that. And so going back home for me and facing my mother would have been extraordinarily difficult.
So she held you back for 2 years because she thought you weren't mature enough to go
Right.
to Morehouse, and then
Right.
she sent you off. And I guess you need to be mature when that's the operating principle. And so then you got involved in the civil rights movement
Yeah.
early on.
Right. Well, when I was a freshman at Morehouse.
Freshman.
Well, I got involved even before that, working for Esau Jenkins, no relation, registering people to vote in Charleston County.
So what year did you go to Morehouse?
In 63.
63.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that was a busy time.
Yeah, right. And I just worked in the SNCC office and went to jail. I just did what I was told. I was just a gopher, you know, because you had all these talkative people like Stokely and people like that coming through.
Did you meet Stokely Carmichael?
Oh, of course. Julia, all those people. Brown.
H. Rap Brown?
I knew his brother better than I knew H. Rap. He was not somebody I would have talked with,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But his brother, Ed Brown, who was older and quieter, more of my style, you know, that's somebody that I knew. Yeah.
So your mother didn't like you being in the civil rights movement?
No, because it took me off her track.
Which was?
Law school. My brother was supposed to go to med school. I was supposed to go to law school.
Oh.
So I even joined
Wouldn't
pre-law.
that be good training for law school?
Going to jail?
Yeah.
Not in my mother's view. No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, no, I had a straight line that I was not supposed to veer from. And I veered. I went to Morehouse. I started pre-law. And my professor, my advisor from Harvard Law School, because Morehouse had this relationship with Harvard Law at the time, said that I should major in math if I was interested in Harvard Law. That's what I did.
Did you like it?
I loved the math, did not like law.
At least it was good advice, though, in terms of the math.
Yeah, right. I found out the thing that I loved, you know, especially after I got past arithmetic. What people don't understand is you don't get to mathematics until you pass calculus, you know, and that's when you take abstract algebra and mathematical logic and the stuff that really turns you on, the stuff that, you know, makes you think how to approach a problem, you know, rather than just trying to work through some arithmetic, you know, equation. You're actually thinking about how to solve problems. That's the part of mathematics. We had this German logician who came from Berkeley. Morehouse was being adopted by a lot of the big schools around the country. And he would give these lectures that were just absolutely amazing. And then they would be like 55 minutes long, not 56 minutes or 54 minutes. You know, Peter Krause. It was just absolutely an amazing
Was this
series.
symbolic logic or?
Mathematical logic. But, yeah.
Can you give me a few more? I took a symbolic logic course.
Okay.
And I was trying to remember.
Well, you start out with set theory,
Mhm.
and then you move on into probability theory.
Mm-hmm.
And then his first doctorate was in philosophy. So he would throw out these philosophical conundrums to you and ask you to apply your mathematical training and logic to solving these conundrums. So, yeah. Yeah.
I'll have
good.
to get my logic book, my symbolic logic book, and show it to you and see if it's
Okay.
because, you know, I did really well in math
Uh-huh.
until after calculus.
Until after calculus. Wow. Okay.
I kind of, the differential equations, I said, I don't think so. And then I had a roommate who was a math major, and he was doing set theory and these other
Right,
things.
right,
And I
right.
looked at that and I said, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so glad to get beyond diff equations until, you
Well,
know.
I don't know anybody who likes it.
Yeah, right. I don't know. No, I didn't either. You know. But abstract algebra, where, you know, people tell you for the first time that, you know, a 10-digit, you know, system is not the only system conceivable, and you try to figure out these other kinds of systems, it's absolutely extraordinary, you know. So, yeah. So,
Anything else at college that you particularly liked?
I liked a lot of stuff in college. I was all over the place. That I ended up graduating with something like 147 hours because, you know, I took religion. I took a number of religion courses. You know, I had grown up Catholic. I had been involved in starting the Catholic Youth Organization in the Atlanta University Center, which is the largest Black Catholic youth organization in the country now. 3 of us started that, and I was very interested in religious courses. I took a course from Dr. Blakey, who God is Dead, you know, back in the 60s. You know, fascinating. That course, I worked harder on that course than any other course I ever took in college. The readings were outrageous, and it was difficult. You know, I did extra theater and stuff like that I liked. Sang and stuff like that. But you know, I loved math. Oh, and I minored in psychology, so I taught. I tutored the statistical lab for psychology students, and then I ended up being allowed to give lectures in statistics when I was a senior.
Wow.
Yeah, so, yeah, Morehouse gave you the opportunity to test your waters, you know. So that was
Wow.
extraordinary. So, so I'm from 2 weeks after graduating from Morehouse, I was in biometry at Emory.
So just before we get there, what did you do in your summers? Was that all for the civil rights movement?
To work and take courses.
Work and take courses all summer as well as...
Yeah, 12 months out of the year I was in school.
Wow.
Yeah, because I had to finish in 4 years. My mother, there was no option about not finishing in 4 years.
You can, in principle, you can finish in 4 years without doing the summer courses, can't you?
But I wanted to take these other courses.
So you voluntarily...
Yeah, so I was taking 18 to 21 hours every semester, plus summer school.
Good heavens.
Yeah, I liked school.
And what were you working? But you were working also.
I was working at a clothing store called Walters, and I also tailored robes for preachers, you know, because they like fancy
You did
robes.
tailoring?
Well, I took tailoring in Lang when I went to Lang. At that time, particularly black Quaker schools, you had to take a trade as well as academic training.
So tell me about tailoring. What you learned? I don't know if
I learned how to make a suit, although I couldn't make one now.
You learned how to make a suit?
Yeah, right. All the measurements and designing on the paper and then cutting and yeah.
Did you ever make a suit? Did you ever make one?
I made one suit, which I don't know that anybody would want to wear, but you know, I finished it.
That's impressive.
Right, Mr. Frazier
I
was
can
the
imagine.
tailor. Yeah, everybody had to take a trade as well as the academic. For those of us in the academic track, yeah, you had to also take a trade.
When I was in high school, we had shop.
Oh
So you
yeah,
could do
some
electrical,
students did that
mechanical,
too.
and stuff,
Right,
and there was sewing. I
right.
don't think there was tailoring.
Well, yeah, the females took what they call sewing, but the men took tailoring. And there was a woman who taught sewing and then Mr. Frazier taught tailoring.
Hmm.
Because making a man's suit is, you have these arithmetic relationships that you have to fulfill as you design the suit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
so
you designed it as well as making it.
well,
Hmm.
under Mr. Frazier's direction.
Yeah, well, of course.
Right.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, I took shop. I think I took a couple of them, but I didn't learn anything serious
Yeah.
that I could be able to do.
The only thing I think you were able to figure out is whether you wanted to do French cuff or straight cuff, or how wide your label was. So beyond that, Mr. Frazier was telling you what to do.
Okay,
basically.
well, that's good. I'm sure of a good result.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 2 weeks after you graduated from Morehouse,
Mm-hmm.
you were in biometry at Emory,
Mm-hmm.
and how did that happen?
The head of the psychology department who took an interest in me, and Dr. Siegel, and arranged for me to go to Emory and arranged for me to get into the Public Health Service Commission Corps. Because after graduating, the draft board in Mount Pleasant wanted to draft me in the Army.
Oh, this would have been 67. I guess.
67, yeah.
Mm.
You're right. So, and I can remember I was sitting in the room with this other guy who was in the 6th or 7th year at Clemson University, and they gave him an exemption. And I thought, well, I just graduated mathematics with honors, and I'm in Emory and biometry, I'm going to get a deferment. No.
Really?
Yeah, 1A. So, yeah. My experience with Emory was not, it was my first experience of discrimination, because up until then I was always in an all-black environment. And it was the first time I ran into a teacher who was extraordinarily biased towards African Americans. And my roommate and I set up this little test on an exam. Yvonne, I can't remember what his last name was, French Canadian, and he was something like 14 or 15.
Years old?
Yeah, he is a genius from Canada, French Canadian, and we decided to set up this little thing. So there was this exam, and Yvonne was by far the smartest kid in the program. So, we decided to help this guy in the class, a white guy, for some of the answers, and made sure that a couple of his answers weren't correct. Then
This was a take-home or something?
it was a take-home. Then we gave, then he turned in his homework, and I turned in my homework, and he made sure that my homework had at least one more correct answer than the other kid. And of course, the other kid got a higher grade than I did. So we went to the head of the program, Malcolm Turner, and wanted to protest it, and he told us that we should be quiet. And so I left
Did
him.
he give you a reason?
The same sort of a Jackie Robinson thing. You're the first one here, so you shouldn't.
Were you the first African American?
And the biometry program.
At Emory?
Well, there were 3 other black students reportedly on the campus that year. I never saw them. I went to Dooley's, looking for the other black students that were supposed to have been there, but I never saw them. Yeah, so I'm not Jackie Robinson. I'm not,
So you were in the commission corps at this time also? Then?
Right. So what happened was, between my draft board at 1A and the experience at Emory, I decided I better go into the Public Health Service Commission Corps in order to avoid the draft.
But so did you have a 2S originally?
No, I
So-
was 1A.
So you had to get your commission. Oh, well, I guess what I'm wondering is if you weren't in the commission corps when you went to Emory,
Yeah.
what kept you in the commission? What kept you out of the draft then, or they just hadn't called your number?
Well, I did delay getting drafted by a few weeks. I flunked the mathematics part.
you flunked the mathematics part
Yes.
of the qualifying test
But-
of the Army?
Yes.
And
One of the
then
great
that-
things
then
about
you
getting the right answers is you also know what the wrong ones are. So, and then the Army recruiter guy got upset about that when he looked back and found that I was a math major and so on.
So this is interesting. So you got called up for your physical after college. You got called up for your physical?
Yeah, well, the first thing they did was to give the test before they did all the physical stuff for some reason. I don't know back then.
I can't remember. I went through it too, but I
Yeah.
can't remember. So the first thing they call you when you take the test,
Right,
and then you flunk the math.
right, I
part.
flunked the math.
So then they waited a while
You're
while
right.
they tried to figure out what the world's going on.
Right. Well, no, I don't know how he figured it out. I don't know what happened. I don't know how he could have figured that out, but he did.
So you were off at Emory. What were they going to do? So because you had failed, they weren't going to draft you? 'Cause you were homeless at math?
They weren't going to draft me until the recruiter figured out.
But I mean, they weren't just because your math was
Yeah.
so bad?
Oh, it was very bad.
I didn't know that there was a math qualification.
I wouldn't have known by my score on the test. I wouldn't have been able to tell my left from my right. So yeah.
So it's because I didn't realize that was an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, when you're desperate, you think of all
I was
kinds
desperate.
of. Yeah.
I didn't think as creatively.
Yeah.
So you were at Emory on borrowed time, and then the recruiter realizes that something's the matter.
Well, what happened was by that time I had left Emory, and I knew I had to do something. So once I was 1A, I started the process of getting into the Public Health Service Commission Corps.
And how did this psychology professor help you to do that?
He connected me with a recruiter from the National Center for Health Statistics. And it turned out, for me, very, very lucky, this is a fluke thing, that the Public Health Service Commission Corps was desperate for biostatisticians at the time. And I was one of the few students in the country who had not only taken statistics courses undergrad, but then I had also taken 2 courses at the graduate level at Emory. So
That was your first. What semester did you have this exam issue that you left Emory? So you'd already finished the first semester?
I finished the first part of the summer course. Yeah, it was a summer course.
The biometry one.
That's right.
I see. Okay.
So after I finished the first part and then this exchange, I went to NCHS, who first hired me as a civilian, but then were working very hard to get me my commission.
And was this in Hyattsville then?
This was eventually, it was originally downtown Washington in HEW South and North, right on at 330 Independence Avenue.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that's where you went for to persuade them to hire you.
Exactly.
And that's where you started working.
Yeah. Well, they agreed to hire me just based on my record, but they hired me as a civilian until they could work through the Commission Corps.
And did they know that you were African American?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
wasn't an issue then.
No. In fact, there were 3 African Americans they recruited from Morehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were all from Morehouse.
So, okay, so you've left Emory and you're now at NCHS.
Right.
And you're not in the Commission Corps yet, but you will be soon.
Hopefully, right.
So let me go back to the story then.
So I got a letter that says I was supposed to report to Fort Dix. By that time, I was a resident in Washington. I was supposed to report Dix for physical and induction. Because the guy,
Oh, the pre-induction physical.
Yeah,
That's the real one.
he was pissed.
Yeah.
So anyway, but somehow, and I think it was the director of NCHS, Ted Woolsey, who made his contacts, got President Johnson to sign our commission papers.
He got President Johnson to sign your papers?
Lyndon Johnson, yeah.
So he must have been pretty influential.
Well, if you walk on Yale's campus, I think there are 3 Woolsey halls.
Oh. Yeah, but I thought it was Bush who went to Yale. I thought Johnson didn't go to Yale, did he?
No. But I'm just saying the Woolsey family were connected.
Yes, they're connected.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
So you got in the Commission Corps, but you still stayed working at NCHS.
So I got in the Commission Corps and I stayed at NCHS, and eventually, after my 2-year training in biostatistics at at NCHS, Mr. Woolsey, Ted Woolsey, asked me to work directly for him as his assistant.
And before that, though, you had your physical to get into the Commission Corps?
Yeah, I did that.
Tell me about?
Well, yeah, that was interesting.
Was that 67?
My first attempt to get the physical for the Commission Corps was still in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But the woman who was at the desk told me I was definitely at the wrong place.
Now, just to understand, so this was through NCHS, this
Yeah.
Commission Corps?
Right.
So you were at
Definitely.
NCHS, they said,
Right.
okay, your papers have been signed.
Right.
Go down to Atlanta to take the physical.
You had to walk up the hill to take the physical. Remember, I was still in Emory at the time.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So you went to CDC
Right.
to take the physical,
Right.
and the lady at the desk
Said,
said no. And you
No.
said, but look, I've got papers.
That's right.
And she said,
At which time the guard comes up with his hand on the gun and said, you're in the wrong place, you need to leave. So
you left?
Yes, I left, yeah. And NCHS flew me up to Washington.
for your physical.
Yeah. So I took my physical in the HEW South building.
What did they say when you said to them that CDC wasn't going to let you take the physical there? What did the NCHS people say? I mean, you told them, didn't you?
Yeah, they didn't say anything. They just said, come to Washington, we'll give you the physical, that's all. I don't think that they were particularly surprised that it happened. Ted Woolsey was a interesting guy. He was an interesting guy. He had strong beliefs about data and he had strong beliefs about good and just and things like that. Yeah. His degree was actually in astrology.
Astrology?
I'm sorry, astronomy. Astronomy.
That would have been pretty
That's right,
novel.
astronomy, right. Yeah.
So they flew you up there, and you had your physical in Washington,
Uh-huh.
and you passed it, and then you went back to...
No, I stayed.
You just stayed there.
I never went back.
Mm-hmm. So now you're at NCHS, and you spent 2 years in training,
Yeah,
and then you're working for Woolsey.
yeah.
And what were you doing for?
I was appointed a deputy equal employment opportunity officer for the public health service.
For all of PHS?
Well, no, it was HRSA at the time. That's what it was called, and that was the public health service was divided.